everybody. Welcome to Book Banter. I'm Raina Nielsen from Blue Cypress Books, and thank you all for joining me this evening. Tonight, I will be talking to local poet Anne Babson. Her newest book, The Bunker Book, just came out a couple of weeks ago, and it is a fascinating collection of poetry inspired by her time in COVID and many other things, which we're going to talk about. And if you have any questions for me or for Anne at any point through the event, just type them in the comments and we will answer them in real time. And without further ado, I'm going to welcome Anne on its screen. Hi.
Hello. How are you today, Raina?
Very good. How are you this evening?
I'm okay. Nice. It's nice to be with you. And hello to everybody who's out there. I think my aunt, who is actually recovering from COVID out in California, might be there. So if you're there, Aunt Barbara, hello.
Yes.
And there may be other people I know. Hello. But in any case, hello, everybody.
Well, thank you so much for joining me for Book Banter. I've been doing these types of events for a while, and I have been waiting secretly for your next project to come out. I know, I didn't want to tell you because it was like, I didn't know if you had anything you were working on, and no pressure. But then you were like, I've got this book coming out, and I'm super excited to be able to talk to you because we originally met like right after Trump got elected. We're just going to go with it.
Yeah, it was in late 2016 that you and I met in a room in Bywater.
I know. I had never been to that location before, and I just it was this Facebook group that had started, and I'm like, I'm gonna show up and see what happens to this random address as far as I knew in the Bywater. But a lot of great friendships have come from that women's group that we met up a few times. So
yes, no, it was lovely to talk to all those very interesting women, and I treasure that memory. At a time when I think we were all looking for something to treasure.
Yes, exactly. And I am glad that it has brought us here. So tell me, what's your Bunker Book elevator pitch to start?
Okay, well, it is, I wouldn't call it an elevator pitch, but the brief understanding of why a person might want to read the Bunker Book is that we're in an unprecedented moment in America, but what we have lived through echoes things that have happened in the past. We are at a time where the country is exceedingly divided and there are extremists, some of whom are quite violent, and others of whom are just kind of half crazed, they seem. And then we've just almost got out of a pandemic, which really hurt people. Over 1 million people died in this country. And I lost 2 friends to the pandemic. Many people did, I locked down. I had to stay out of work, but I was teaching online instead of at the Southeastern Louisiana University classrooms where I normally teach, and l'Union Française where I teach French. Yes. And I started thinking about what I had studied that at all resembled our time. And I did find some antecedents in 2 different places. People in the Middle Ages faced a pandemic known as the bubonic plague, and they did not have germ theory or the idea that a virus might exist, or even some very basic knowledge about hygiene, medical hygiene, and consequently it was terrifying to them. If you were rich and it was, say, 1450 and there was a plague outbreak near you, you could hole yourself up with a bunch of wine, maybe a couple servants who seemed like they were healthy, who could cook your food. And if you were rich enough to have a library, which meant you were very rich, you could have tales that you could read to just not go crazy. One of the great works of the late Middle Ages, the Decameron, is written with the premise that there are these people holed up telling each other stories just so they don't lose their mind while everyone is dying around them. outside. And I decided, as someone who studied medieval literature, to revisit the plague tale as a genre. And if you read this book, you'll see a lot of medieval imagery and Catholic imagery combined with Southern Gothica, which is a really weird combination. Like, I have one poem where Julian of Norwich, a woman mystic, is in a swimming pool talking to Jesus on the cross while Elvis does the backstroke, and that couldn't happen in real life, and yet it sort of was happening metaphorically in real life, that we had a time where our society was going through actually a very old problem, that was so old that we have mostly forgotten how to even imagine it. Extremism is sadly nothing new. So this book has literal Nazis and Nazi hunters, like World War II Nazis, not people that I call Nazis because I disagree with them. They call me a Nazi, no, you've got Nazis and Nazi hunters running around the city, and there is some kind of resistance. The woman who is at the center of the book has buried herself in an abandoned missile silo near New Orleans. I'm assuming it's the West Bank. Like, if you look at this photo, I took this at Algiers Point, and this is imagined as sort of a place where she might have maybe been. It's obviously fictitious, but the idea would be that she's taken these books out of the libraries they were going to burn anyway, and she's hidden herself with her dog in this bunker with enough food to last for a decade. She's hoping it doesn't take that long. She's got people on the outside are going to let her know when this coast is clear. But the problem is that being that alone with a dog and a bunch of books, she sort of has this hysterical series of conversations with poets of the French Resistance and Marlene Dietrich. She imagines she uses her virginity to Rhett Butler, who is more book than man when she does it. I think it is a way for us to understand, as most people in New Orleans do, that in New Orleans, there is no past that is completely past. As Faulkner said, the past isn't dead, it's not even the past. In New Orleans, the city is literally a palimpsest. You've got stuff that was built in the 1700s. You've got stuff built on top of that, and more stuff built on top of that, and more stuff built on top of that. And we are never quite out of the past. And so I decided to embrace that as an aesthetic for this book, and to make it be a book that has a lot of hope in it. I've talked about plague, and I've talked about civil unrest, but I do believe that the book is incredibly hopeful. I think it's about us overcoming all this stuff, which is something that I believe all of us really and truly want to do. And maybe not to return to our old normal, but to return to a normal that works for us. And this woman reimagines her life in conversation with medieval writers and others in a bunker while she does it. And I think that it's anyone who's a book lover, and I have to believe anyone who tunes into Book Banter is probably a pretty big book lover, because this isn't called football banter. This is book banter. This is a book that talks a good deal about other books as well. So probably books that you've read, or books that you might be curious to read. But it does so in a way that's creative rather than didactic. It's not saying there'll be a test at the end of this poem. And it basically gives you a picture of this. And it's very conversational. I have a series of poems that are named after months. And I explained that it's got to do with the idea of a medieval book of hours, but basically you don't even need to know that. Basically, this woman has been there for a while in this bunker, so she's got the time that she's talking to people, but she's talking to absent friends, basically, which I think a lot of us did, sometimes on Zoom, and sometimes just in our heads. and during the pandemic. And I say that as if it were past. Cases are on the rise in New Orleans. I recommend considering get yourself that last booster or finally get the vaccine. And also consider whether and where you might wear a mask, because if the numbers hold at this climbing rate, we are in for another wave. And I really hope that doesn't happen.
Yeah, and we are like at the beginning of winter again. It's warm. It was warm again today, and the sun is shining. And I'm wearing a sweater, but when I went outside, when I took it off today. So it feels like it's not winter, but it truly is, and most of the world it is, and that is not helpful for things like COVID. So.
No, well, most people who live in New Orleans don't love winter as their favorite time of year. Because if you wanted snow, you'd be somewhere to the north of us. This is not a snowy place.
No, and I often say that New Orleans is as far north as I ever want to live. And New Orleans is fashionable winter. We have fashionable winter. It gets cold and just cold enough to have a scarf or some tights, some cute boots, but not so cold that I need a jacket to live, to survive when I go outside. I never need to worry about actually, needing a coat to survive. And that's exactly where I want to be.
Yeah, no, that makes perfect sense to me. So that's what the Bunker book is, basically. It's a wide-ranging discussion that is informed in a conversational way by really, 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 really old books.
I love that.
I have and every time there are other poets who've written about, like Ode to Horace, Ode to Homer. And those were very popular in the 1700s, those kinds of poems. I think those poems mostly stink. And but the idea that you might say, wow, there were these really interesting writers who wrote before me. And I'm fascinated. That's useful. And I'm fascinated by medieval women mystics who, on one surface level, were probably crazy AF. But on the other hand, they are imagining a world where God loves them, which was by no means the uniform point of view of the church, and that they might get to make their own decisions with God's help, which is,
they were living on the edge back in the day.
No, listen, it's hard to, we don't exactly respect women's choices in the United States of America in the way that we might. Let's just say it that way. So I engage with them in a way that's not ode to Julian of Norwich, but I do have her swimming around in a pool with Elvis while she talks to bleeding Jesus in the way she did in her mystical vision. I have the main character of the Bunker book actually teach the wife of Bath, who is Chaucer's most vivid character. She's arguably the most interesting character written for 500 years in English literature. Teaches her how to write her name, which is something she couldn't do. And she, in Chaucer's book, she throws a book in the fire that tells her husband that women are evil, because she's like, this is nonsense. Right. I'm speaking from the authority of experience, she says. But she can't read or write, and she has an argument about why you can't trust what you read in books, which is funny, given, A man's writing her, and B, women don't write books in those days mostly. And so why would you trust what, only what men say? But when she writes this, she responds back, and it's very moving place, because I think that if I think about the work of Malala Yousafzai to make sure that women get educations, and the current threats to that access to education that exist in places like Kabul right now. They've shut down the universities. Women can no longer attend. And there are death threats for women who want to learn to read and write. And that means that there's power in reading and writing, first of all. But also it means that the wife of Bath's problem is not a problem that no woman on earth still has. Yes. And I think that there is a kind of desire to both for men and women to be led away from hard facts, to be led away, to be distracted from crimes going on over here. And I'm saying don't take the bait. Don't take the bait. This book is about calling BS on things that may just be BS.
Well, I'm take a pause and say hi to Cheryl. Cheryl Gaffner is watching. She says,
"Oh my goodness, hi Cheryl! I have known her since we were teenagers, which means 5 years. I've known Cheryl for 5 years."
You're getting pummeled in San Francisco. Is it raining? Snowing?
Yes. No, they're having some really harsh rain in California right now.
Yeah.
Well,
Asher says hi, and Barbara Turner.
That's my aunt.
Oh, there you go. She made it.
And no, I'm glad that people are here. I could talk more about the book. Do you have any more questions for me? Does anyone have any questions for me?
Yeah, if there are any questions, type them in the comments, just like you're doing. We will answer them. Alyssa Speranza, yes. Calling BS through the ages could be the tagline.
Yes, well, I think that's the tagline for my whole career, frankly. I think I was born to call BS through the ages, not through only my ages, but just any age. I might read a little bit of the book if
absolutely. Go for it.
All right. So I wanted to write back to the kind of things you see also in medieval art. And one of the things that is very strange that really happened in a lot of medieval artwork is obviously religious themes dominated in Europe. But let's say you'd expect to see Jesus on the cross. You'd expect to see people mourning him who were from the Bible, like Mary Magdalene, the Virgin Mary, St. Peter. But then let's say you bought you paid for the painting. You could be like about 2 feet back behind Mary Magdalene in a pious position of prayer. And so I wrote this about that kind of art, to how it might speak to our days. It's called Altarpiece, Where I Kneel Before the Head of John the Baptist. I paid for this gouache on wood panel, so I get to photobomb it. Behind the apostles and the local patron saint, that's me, on my knees, giving you side eye. Or am I? The master of this altarpiece was so talented, his name lost to the ages. I saw to that. Why should anonymous always be a woman? How do you like my ermine, my gold ring? The head got slapped on the platter, gaping like a dead fish. Salome in yellow, very fetchingly, holds it like cold cuts. She offers it to her kneeling guests. Her mother asked for it, not I. The bodice on her gown hangs loose still, as if she just slipped it on after a night of pole dancing at Herod's club. I am just gazing at her as you gaze at the slimy buttocks of a Kardashian on your phone screen. The head on the platter wears a halo. It's fashion forward. Don't blame me for this atrocity. I just paid for the right to stare at with you at the wreckage from floor seats. My hands are poised together, my lips slightly parted. Christ have mercy, I seem to say. Lord have mercy. Isn't this awful? It is, isn't it? Show me again.
Woo! Oh, I love how you use, I can picture myself. You did this amazing job of, you were explaining to me earlier, world building, and you really do. Like, I can see her just living through her like day to day in this bunker, but then also falling into these books and having that be sort of her world for a little bit as she entertains herself, and maybe gets a little bit the lines between reality and the bunker, and what she's reading gets a little bit blurred as she's letting that become her world for a little bit, like escaping the bunker into this. And I can see it. I mean, we all locked down, and during that period of time, however long it was for you, what you did with your family or where you live is relative, but I think we all sort of reached that point for a day or a week or a month where we're like just sort of spinning and finding those things and just like living in that. And you do this great job, like this painting, and you're describing it, and I can just see her sitting there just giving over, letting her mind run with these ideas.
Well, I think that we all binge watched more during lockdown than we did at other times. There were probably shows on Netflix that in a busy time of life we might not take the time to watch. A lot of people took up a lot of hobbies that were important too. For me, I spent a lot of time in Bible study. For me, that was really very enriching. But it was a complicated time in the contemporary American church because I knew people who were saying that it was all a hoax. And I actually lost a friend who refused the vaccine because she decided it was the mark of the beast, and she died from COVID. And it was so stupid that somebody would die such a needless death. And this was someone that I dearly loved. She also gets sucked into a variety of World War II-ish paradigms. We see a resistance to this hegemony that would burn books, because the reason why she's there with all those books is because the libraries were going to burn them anyway. And there are commandos that are fighting somebody, and we don't quite see who, but we get a sense it's very much akin to World War II Nazis. I have imagine herself, the speaker of these poems, it is sucked into a Marlene Dietrich movie, because apparently she was kind of with some movies and some music and things like this. But and she it gets sucked into the Marlene Dietrich movie, and then she looks out into a cinema audience and she says, "Are you sure you beat the Nazis? Because from where I am right now, it doesn't really look like it." And Marlene Dietrich sings, and there is this very interesting problem with that. And but there are these very interesting conversations about books in general. I imagine myself as a child, or rather the speaker, I'll put it that way, imagines herself as a child, reading Laura Ingalls Wilder, Little House on the Prairie books. And she wants to get out of a difficult situation, but she can't escape with Laura Ingalls the way that Tom and Huck can get on a raft, or Tom and Jim, I should say, get on a raft to escape problems in the South. But little girls they get thrown down wells, but they don't end up on rafts braving the wilds of the Mississippi. And that's a problem in literature, and it's a problem in life. And so all of these poems are sort of allegorically constructed, but I think they talk very directly to real life circumstances right now in 2023, because I am suggesting to us that if we feel unmoored, like the fact that we still don't have a Speaker of the House today at this hour, and they've taken multiple votes. They can't even do the very first thing to swear in our Congress. Whatever you think about who should be Speaker, that is an American problem. Do we have any precedents for this? People saying, let's go back to 100 years ago and look at it then. But you know what? I'm saying let's go all the way back. Let's go to the medieval books that people had in times of frenzied division in society, civil wars. Let's talk about extremists who want to destroy our body of knowledge, or are very anti-intellectual, who want to censor books. I think that nothing could be more contemporary than that right now. So that's what I did. It wasn't just a little pandemic project. It was like, some people made a lot of sourdough bread. Good for you if you did. Sorry, I didn't taste any of it. I myself did not make sourdough bread during the pandemic. Instead, I wrote kind of peculiar, but I think evocative poems about stuff that existed in the Middle Ages at times of plagues, because people really did need to do something in plagues not to go crazy. And I don't know how crazy anybody who's listening here today is, but if you are potentially going a little stir crazy or maybe shocked at the tenor of our weird times, this book might just be for you, because I think I'm talking to people. Let me see if I can find another poem to read to you all. There's one called December Bunker. Golly, where is it? I'm not finding it. I'm so sorry.
I do remember December Bunker because you talk about roasting chestnuts, and I thought they tasted, I can't remember the word you used, but I thought they tasted that way too.
Yeah, they do. I wouldn't recommend them. All right. I'm sorry. I didn't put them in chronological order, my things.
So, note to self, I guess, chronological. No, I know it's at the back somewhere. Well, I'm gonna speak to Marcia Turner. Mentioned something. I think I need a reading list of all the books I need to read to understand all the references. So, do you have a list of these books?
Okay. First of all, it seems like my whole family showed up. Hi, Marcia. How are you? She's my cousin. Well, I don't think you have to read a ton of books, but it would be more like if you looked at an art book on medieval art, you would see images that look like the things that I refer to. If you know anything about the Catholic Church's rituals, that might maybe be helpful for a couple references throughout the book, but they're not dominant and central. I recommend to every modern woman to read The Book of the City of Ladies by Christine de Pizan, who is the person, if I actually had a time machine and could go back to any person to meet them. I mean, okay, maybe I should go kill Hitler. But on my way to killing Hitler, I'm first going to stop in the 1400s and have lunch with Christine de Pizan, because she wrote a book sitting all by herself in the 1400s about how the world would be better if women ran it. And she imagines all the ways that would be better and all the really cool women who lived before her who would be participating in this. And she herself is buried in a library with books, and she is imagining building a city where the women are both the builders and the things built in this city. I highly recommend it. It is not in a paradigm of ours. The Book of the City of Ladies, there are a number of positive translations for that. There's also, let's see, I mentioned something called a Book of Hours, which is more of a genre rather than a, it's a genre rather than a, what do you call it? A single book. But basically, if you had pictures of things for each month, it's almost like a calendar in a book where you have lovely pictures. And so I would recommend looking at these pictures. Just look up a Book of Hours. And I mentioned the one by the Duc de Berry, which is one of the prettiest ones from the Middle Ages. And it's just pictures of people like, it's sowing time in the summer. It's harvest time in the autumn. There's nothing really mysterious about it. It's just something that some people looked at because they had so little to look at. They don't have Netflix to binge during the Middle Ages. I also talk about Gone with the Wind. I just mostly to talk about Rhett Butler, to whom I lose my virginity in the book, or at least the speaker of the poem does. I know you'll be very surprised. I did not actually lose my virginity back in the day to a fictional character. Shame. I make references to both Laura Ingalls Wilder, and if you've even watched an episode of Little House on the Prairie, you're set. Huckleberry Finn is mentioned. I recommend everyone in America go visit Graceland one time in their lives to understand the United States of America. You might see some architectural features from Graceland, but even just having heard of Graceland is enough here. I mean, I don't think you actually have to, there's no quiz at the end of this book. In fact, all you have to do is be an American living here and now to get it, I think.
How did you decide on these books to include?
I guess I thought about which books I would want to preserve in the event that they were actually burning books, which ones seemed indispensable. Also, I'm a little weird in case you haven't figured this out just from watching. And I actually really did do medieval doctoral studies. And so I am actually that big of a nerd. And so for me, the wife of Bath is the most interesting character in 500 years. And I am fascinated by the ways that women in oppressive situations tried to reclaim things in the European paradigm at a time when they were not welcome. And then I also thought about how many times, like when I watched the child separation policy at the border, who could look at that and not think about the Holocaust? I don't know. And I therefore wanted to talk about actual Nazis. Like, and part of that is that because having lived in New Orleans and gone to a couple of demonstrations, I have literally been nose to nose with white supremacists. And because, you know, they don't
there you go.
let them scare me. But I also think that we need to have a conversation in this culture about where they got their ideas, because they didn't invent anything. And sadly, what they think they know about the past is twisted. And and I don't think that I'm going out on a limb here saying white supremacy equals bad. I
feel that's fair.
I think it's fair too. But so I think that in order to understand where we stand right now, I think we do have to understand the hysteria that people experienced through the bubonic plague. Like there were lots of efforts to try to get people to stay out of the streets. Even churches shut down during the bubonic plague because they knew it was literally dangerous. By the way, it was the only time in history to this day that the Catholic Church actually let women serve communion, because they figure, let those women risk their lives. The priests are too valuable, I think. And so in any case, I was making a point and I got distracted. I'm so sorry. The thing is that I think that we can find antecedents in the past that will help us understand our times. But I think the most important thing is to be awake. I mean, right now in the state of Louisiana, there are multiple libraries that actually are talking about censoring a fair number of books.
Oh my gosh, yes.
And I will be co-hosting a panel discussion of that on Zoom for the Women's National Book Association, probably in February, with librarians talking about this problem, because we should not let people, they're not burning books in the schoolyard, but what they are doing is they are limiting access to factual information and other kinds of information that are cultural in nature, and we can't let that happen.
Can I ask you about that event you just mentioned with the Women's National Book Association? If I link just to their national website, will you be able to find it that way, or how?
No,
how
you'll need the WNBA of NOLA, that's or WNBA NOLA, which is not Women's National Basketball Association. We don't have anything up yet because it's still in the planning phase. Okay. But I will definitely let people know about it. I'm the president of the Women's National Book Association of New Orleans. And so we're doing a lot of things. If you want to know about us, that would be great. But
yeah, and I'm gonna link to, this is the New Orleans chapter of the WNBA, and then keep your
super wonky. It looks like your grandma designed it, because pretty much she did.
Well, you can keep, if you know Anne, you can follow Anne and she'll give you the information, and you can keep your eye on that website as well. And I'm sure it will pop up there as soon as that information is available, because that sounds fascinating to me. Being a bookseller, I know book bannings happen all of the time, and it is amazing to me how few people understand that it is happening constantly. People are challenging and banning books constantly. It is a constant fight. And that it is happening so close to home. You know, other people either think that it's far away geographically or it's far away chronologically, you know, time, and that's just absolutely not true.
So, is there any?
I did find. Do you want to read December? It's Bunker. It's page 50.
Page 50. We sort of changed topics, but
we have. But you know what? It's a good place to start wrapping up with one more poem from the book, because
the book imagines that this woman is in this bunker for a long time, and she has a lot of things to say. And so this one goes out to Martha Stewart. December bunker. One Christmas, I roasted chestnuts in the fireplace with my wonderful husband, Mark. Only I didn't have a fireplace. Mark divorced me. Chestnuts taste like wet cardboard, but there I was roasting them, and my Mark was out caressing creases and crotches while I shuffled the Nat King Cole carols and watched the white flames making spirits bright. Although it's been said many times in an interrogation alibi, in this tin hut, have yourself a merry little whatever you need, darling. Have yourself a merry contrarian. This bunker is soundproof. What do you need?
Oh my gosh. I am so glad that you read a couple of poems this evening, because you're amazing at it. Your voice is, I don't know if you have any acting background whatsoever, but you're embodying the characters. I love it.
Well, Cheryl Gaffner, if she's still on, knows that I'm a great big ham and always have been. I just want to say there's an audiobook that will also be coming out eventually, probably before the end of the year. I just finished recording it with the same guy who does the sound recording for The Reading Life on WWNO. George Ingmeyer is the sound engineer, and he's a wonderful sound engineer. And they're also going to be putting another one of my books in audiobook form. But for now, this is the book to have. I recommend getting a print copy there. If you come to a book party that I'm throwing at l'Union Française at 4522 Britannia Street at 6:30 p.m. on next Tuesday night in New Orleans, I will sign that book for you.
Nice. I'm going to put a link to your website. I'm assuming the info to that event is on your website.
It is. If you look under events, which is sort of on the far right side, this is like other things. Is like one thing is at least to my food website, but then there's also events.
Excellent. So check out Anne's website for information about all of her events. And I'm going to put the link one more time to grab her book from us at Blue Cypress. We have signed copies. And if we run out, we will get more signed copies from Anne. So we will have an endless supply. And tell us one more.
Invite me to come read in person at some point.
So we're going to make this happen. Okay. Our calendar was chock full for when your book actually came out at the holidays and all of this stuff. But we're gonna get it. It's gonna happen.
Okay.
Also, are you on The Reading Life?
Yes, I will be. Thank you for reminding me to say that. The WWNO FM NPR affiliate show, The Reading Life, about books written by mostly New Orleanian authors, is coming out on tomorrow, actually, or today is Thursday. Yeah, tomorrow.
Yep.
And it'll be on available in podcast form. I highly recommend their podcast. It's really wonderful. You learn about a lot of different kind of books. Susan Larson, the doyenne of books in Louisiana, interviewed me about the book. She was very generous in her assessment of it. And yeah. So
beautiful. Well, I put a link to that too, so everybody far and wide can get a hold of that episode and listen to Anne talk about her book a little bit more over there with Susan Larson, who is the book interviewer. So one day that she's the pinnacle. She's up here.
Honestly, I've sat with her and had coffee, and we went over. I tried to think of any book that I had read that she had not read, and honestly, we only found one book. She has read everything. That woman has read everything in the card catalog at the library.
Yeah, she's truly a book lover. She does not do it just for a job. She does it because it is her passion. And I absolutely look up to her and all the work that she has done for books and for the city and all of that. So
definitely.
Well, thank you so much for joining me for Book Banter, Anne. It was
such a pleasure to talk to you. I always have a great time when I talk to you.
I know, it's wonderful hanging out with you. And thank you to everyone who watched and everyone who commented and said something. We truly appreciate all of that feedback, all of that interaction. And grab a copy of Anne's book.
Yes. I think you will enjoy it. I really do.
Absolutely.
Thanks a lot, everybody.
Good night. Bye-bye.